Hello everyone, welcome. This is Poe from Tomfoolery Incorporated, and welcome to my first scripted video on this channel. It's been a minute since I discussed the stuff that I care about in something that wasn't a podcast with Mirage, so I wanted to talk a bit about the current state of one of my favorite franchises in the world, Sonic the Hedgehog. To say that the Sonic franchise has had a perfect history of consistently good and well-made games is like saying the earth is flat. It's hard to believe, simply because it's not true. Now, I've been a Sonic fan my whole life, and I can personally say that I've never finished a Sonic game and thought even once, and thought it was... Script is wrong. and thought it was perfect by any means. Every game has its issues, but this is not to say that every game is bad. As a matter of fact, I would argue the majority of games in this franchise are good to some degree, though admittedly it's like a 60-40 split. A lot of what the community considers a big catalyst for initial or prior disappointment related to the release of one of these games is what we in the community call the Sonic cycle. And to be completely honest with you, it hits the nail right on the head. I want to be on the side of people that say it's totally made up, not true, or just straight up a salty fan being a jerk about the franchise. But it's got a lot of things right. The cycle starts when a new game is announced and it ends when it's released. It typically comprises of fans being excited, losing the hype, and then ultimately being very disappointed when they're proven right. The most obvious instances of this cycle in my mind are Sonic 4 and Sonic Forces, but the other games are typically under this umbrella. However, I would like to point out that recently it's been true less and less, with games like Sonic Mania and Sonic Frontiers being generally well received despite huge expectations and major anxiety behind their releases. I would argue the franchise is in an uphill climb. This is certainly not the best... Whoa, I'm too loud. This is certainly not the best state the series has ever been in, but progress is certainly being made. And so here we are. It's 2024, the year of the Hedgehog, despite it being a Knuckles anniversary, but whatever, and hype can be felt by everyone. There's a new movie, a game coming tomorrow, as of this video's release, and a sick cartoon. We sit here waiting for the Shadow Storm to arrive and bring about inevitable talk in the gaming atmosphere about whether the hype was worth it or not. Personally, I find myself terrified and excited by what I've seen and heard. From what I can tell, the Shadow Generations gameplay demo was liked by many, though maybe not to the extent that Sonic Frontiers' demo was, with lots of people stating that the gameplay feels good and the visuals are fresh. The movie, of course, also comes out soon, and I can't help but feel apprehensive about it. Keanu as Shadow is bound to be a good time, and the second film vastly improved upon the groundwork of the first, but the humans took a lot more of the screen time than I think any one of us would have liked. Unfortunately, I still find myself riddled with fear at the many things that can be messed up, and most of it comes simply from the fact that the focus is so heavily laid on Shadow the Hedgehog. Now, Shadow is no stranger to controversy, and quite frankly, when it comes to Sonic characters, there's no greater example of wasted potential and misguided ideas. Except maybe Silver. Shadow the Hedgehog 2005 is an alright enough game to play, at least when it comes to gameplay, but when it comes to story, the character is not only entirely changed, he's also molded to fit some kind of odd standard that the higher-ups must have felt would have benefited him best. He's essentially been gutted. He's become the embodiment of those emo wolf memes that I know you've seen, always rambling about Maria, always wanting to be the best above all, being the most forcefully edgy character ever made. Compare this to Shadow in his debut, and the differences are immediately obvious. Of course, not everything about Shadow's personality is bad in his spin-off, but it's definitely not what most people wanted from the character. The new Dark Beginnings shorts that Sonic the Hedgehog has been posting on YouTube have settled me on this a little though, as I feel they much better show the big-hearted grumpy grandpa as he was meant to be portrayed. But I still have my worries. My phone is blowing up right now. Because if I had a nickel for every time Sega made me think Shadow's character was going to get better from a storytelling standpoint, I'd have 2 nickels. It's not a lot, but it's annoying that it happened twice. Now let me get something straight. I don't necessarily hate the edgelord Shadow. His edginess has definitely spiced up his character a little bit and made for some better storytelling, though admittedly very little of it. What I love about it though is the gameplay possibilities that open up when they write him this way. First of all, those Doom powers. Oh my. They are fantastically cool in ways I can't really describe through intelligent speech, so I'll just say it how I see it. It is radical, dude. I mean, don't get me wrong, it feels kind of weird, and out of left field for sure. But if they're gonna incorporate Black Doom, this may be the best way to do it if you ask me. I can't wait to see just how it's gonna affect moment-to-moment gameplay, or whether it will at all. Black Doom fan service is one thing in an ocean of fan service, however. From cartoons to Mephiles to concept art becoming a skin, to Keanu Reeves for crying out loud. It's clear that Sega is doing everything in its power to hype up this game. Whether that affected the 9 out of 10 rating IGN gave it or not remains to be seen, but I think it's safer to just never give reviews the time of day anyway. IGN journalists are arguably the most incorrect people on the planet when it comes to reviewing games, so it's always a coin toss as to whether we should trust this review or not. These are the same guys that said Sonic games have never been good, if that provides some perspective, and yet here they are giving it a 9. I want so badly to believe the reviews for this game, but I've been burned so many times by this franchise that it's hard for me to be convinced. Just so you understand where I'm coming from, this game has a 10 out of 10 on Steam as of the writing of this video, and it's still unavailable to play, so I'm sure you can understand the hesitation. Another small thing I'm worried about with Shadow Generations is the overall polish of the games, something that Sega's rivals over at Nintendo always seem to outclass them in. It isn't always an issue, but I feel like more recently there hasn't been a single Sonic game that hasn't had numerous game-breaking bugs. I was excited for Superstars, and it looked really well made, but then I run into things like this, and I start to question my will to live. Sonic, this is an intervention. You need to explain to us right now. What are you doing? The part I find the most frustrating is simply the fact that Shadow's story became controversial in the first place. My first encounter with the character was in Sonic Adventure 2 on my grandma's GameCube, and I distinctly remember having a moment of, who the heck is this guy? Which then quickly turned into, I don't know who he is, but I know that I want to know. He's just so cool. I was so curious about the character, and I think that kind of mysterious vibe that he had really enhanced my experience with the overall game and how I viewed Shadow as a whole. He's a lot like Sonic, that much is obvious, but inside they really couldn't be more different. For those of you familiar with Dragon Ball Z, you could think of the relationship with Goku and Vegeta after they fought. Why did I say that like that? Vegeta and Goku are not friends at the time. They simply unite against a common enemy. The same can be said for Sonic and Shadow. Who Shadow grows into as a character does change because of Sonic. They make each other stronger and better. But Sonic can't change Shadow at his core. Shadow is a serious, no-nonsense guy who likes to do things the right way and do them as efficiently as possible. One common thing among speedster characters in fiction is that you can tell a lot about their priorities and what kind of person they are from what they use their speed for. Shadow goes fast to get things done. He does things his way, and he does them the best way he can. He's not this like snooty, childish, prideful jerk that Sega wants him to be nowadays. He never really was that prideful before. He was just outwardly rude to people who get in the way of his objective. On the inside, he's just a fuzzy little teddy bear. Oh, I almost forgot. There's one thing about Shadow's story I didn't mention. In the original game he debuts in, Shadow dies. Yes, really, like he straight up dies. They mourn him and everything. So for those of you less familiar with the franchise, I wouldn't blame you for being confused because he obviously isn't dead. Why is that? Well, it's simple. Money! You can't keep a character like Shadow dead for very long. If a popular enough character exists, they're not gonna let go of it, especially if people take to it quickly. I don't know if Sonic Team knew this the whole time, but it doesn't seem like they did, because the way his death is retconned really makes no sense at all given the story they had at the time. Nothing about how they brought him back to life gives a sense of knowledge that he'd be a well-liked character that fans would like to see return. Honestly, the way it's retconned almost makes it feel as if they didn't have faith people would like him in the first place. At the same time though, duh, of course they loved him. He's a really cool character, and come on. These are Sonic fans. You can't get rid of their favorite character. Who else are they going to use as the basis for their entire personality off of without their comfort character? With their favorite Sonic character dead, they'll have to make an angry post in all caps on Twitter about how they cry that their favorite part of their life has been taken from them, and they'd have to delete their entire Tumblr fanfiction shipping them with Silver. My point is that the fan base has a really deep connection to these characters, for better or for worse, mostly worse, and the whole idea of Shadow dying was never really going to work, which I find kind of sad. It was a meaningful and emotional death. It was poetic. He died for his new friends. He did what Maria did for him so many years ago, sacrificed himself to save their lives. It was touching, it was saddening, and it left little kids like me sad, wishing that there was some other way, some other kind of ending where I can save Shadow and everyone would live happily ever after. But there isn't. Shadow is dead, and there's no getting around it. But he'll always live on in the hearts of those who remember the sacrifice that he made for them. At least, that's what I would say if they didn't just retcon the whole thing so they could bring back the ultimate edgelord to print them more money. That's what scares me about this new game and movie. Shadow is a character with a lot of depth and a franchise made for kids. His treatment is not going to depend on what I like best for his story, or even what kids like for his story. Nowadays, Shadow is an edginess quoted as Sega. He could end up with a characterization that most of his fans would hope for, but we just have to wait and see. Shadow's walking a tightrope, and the way he leans is ultimately going to decide whether he stands strong or falls off. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I know it was a bit of a short video today, but please let me know if you enjoyed it. Are you excited for this Year of Shadow holiday season? Please let me know. Thanks so much for the support. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, I'll gladly do more. Thank you Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay funky.